Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How's it going?
Awesome. How are you? Thank you for joining me this Sunday evening, sir.
Well, thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
This is going to be a lot of fun. So, is that on your end?
I didn't hear anything. Was it a ghost?
I have ears, like bionic ears. I can hear like this little, like whistling noise.
Uh-uh.
I can hear it.
Should I start calling you Jamie Summers?
So, all right, I'm going to try to ignore it as much as I can. Anyway, so for everybody, there's everybody jumping in. Hi, everybody. How's my peach? There she is. So let's start at the beginning. Let's just jump right into it. Hey, Cody. For anybody that doesn't know you, with me and Ross were talking behind the scenes for a minute, and he has been in this for about 30 years. He was telling me. So that's a lot. 30 years is a lot, a long time. I am maybe far. I was going to say I'm not far behind you, but I kind of am because it's only been like 15-ish for me. So half of that, 15, 20, somewhere in there. So if you don't mind, just maybe start at the beginning, and then where you are right now.
You bet. So, as we were talking about, I've been in the field for actually a little over 30 years. I started the oldest ghost hunting group in the Pacific Northwest, known as a GHOST, which stands for the Advanced Ghost Hunters of Seattle, Tacoma. I've written 12 books on the paranormal. I've been featured on pretty much all the television shows. I also, we'll probably talk a little bit later about it, I also have my own docuseries, just came out, called Parasense, The Naked Experiments. I am actually the first in history to try and prove touch. And so we use naked subjects to validate the physical contact that people claim to have when they're either pushed or touched or scratched or even kissed. It doesn't have to be always negative.
Right.
And so we use the physical body to try and validate that. Also with my partner, Chad Goodwin, who's a scientist and engineer. And we actually are trying to bring more science into the field and validate these experiences. So when somebody has that physical contact, is there something in the environment that we can prove that there was a reading there? So yeah, we definitely.
Do you have like cameras on these people? And like if they say they get touched, do you look to see if there's like a?
Oh yeah, we've built a whole spectre system that we call, and it does a 360 around the subject, and so it monitors the environment around the subject, and helps us to determine if there was something that happened. I don't know if you want to go into it right now.
I know. I was like, wait a second.
There's a lot to talk. It's received a few awards right now, so we're really excited about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But we were talking about the history of this, how I got into it. But
I'm really interested in this because, I mean, for most people, that would be like Naked and Afraid.
Exactly, and that's what a lot of people compare it to. But we really are trying to change the field of paranormal research. We're trying to let people not be so afraid of the science.
Uh-huh.
And I know people always question the fact, well, this is just naked ghost hunting, and it's not that. The nudity is to validate the encounter. They're alone in a haunted room with equipment monitoring the environment and monitoring around the subject. And so we use nudity because if somebody's going to say that they've been touched, let's say, oh, I felt a tap on my shoulder, but they're wearing clothes,
Right.
it automatically becomes a contaminated evidence
Okay.
because you're not able to see what is actually physically happening to the physical body because the clothes are in the way. And of course,
Right.
anybody in the scientific field or even a skeptic will say, well, who's to say it wasn't their shirt or their jacket or whatever they were wearing that could
Absolutely.
have caused that sensation?
Right.
And so you have to eliminate that just to validate these experiences. And you do, if you are trying to be scientific in your approach, you have to see what is happening to the physical body.
Uh-huh.
Is there something happening to the skin? Is there something happening to the muscles? Can you actually see the encounter when it happens?
Now, have you seen this? Have you validated? Have you been able to do that?
Yes. In fact, one of the things that we have, which is considered a big discovery in the scientific field, is when you can produce patterns.
Yes.
And one of the things that we have actually determined on separate occasions when people actually got scratched, and we were documenting it from beginning to end, there was a pattern that happened with the equipment that, we actually are the first to track the phenomena as well, because you can actually see through the sensors that we use. Something comes out of nowhere, tags the subject, and then runs away
Mm-hmm.
on both cases. So for me and for anybody who is even scientific, we've got the data to validate that now.
So do you get the same subjects all the time?
No, we use different people.
And then what about location? Like, how do you pick out a location for this?
Well, we definitely have to make sure that there is physical phenomena happening to individuals.
Right.
If you got residual hauntings or just people seeing apparitions, obviously it's more of a waste of your time, because you want to have cases where people have been physically touched by a ghost.
Right.
So we choose those locations. We use different subjects because you want different validations. And it's just been an amazing experience. I've been doing this for well over now 7 years, this research.
What got you started with that?
Well, what got me started was the fact that I had a young man contact me from Northport, Washington, and he was doing some construction work on an old abandoned brothel. And when he was upstairs, something groped him. And so for me, I've heard lots of cases where people have been touched by ghosts and even sexually. The most famous is the Entity Case from the
Yes,
70s.
that movie to
Oh,
this
yeah.
day is up there with the scariest movie. It, to this day scares me when I watch
Oh,
it.
yeah. Oh, yeah. So cases like that were not unusual for anybody who's been in this field. And people who've been in the field have probably even had experiences where they've been touched in various different ways. But in all honesty, that's your personal experience.
Right.
And when you tell somebody that experience, you just have to take their word for it. It's like, you claim you were groped. Okay. I just have to take your word for it. But it really got me thinking. It's just like, well, how could you validate those kind of encounters? And so I started doing tons and tons of research. I've got a massive library with well over 500 books on the paranormal. And I could not find anything out there where anybody's ever tried to validate touch. Because I
Mhm.
was looking for some sort of, a route to go by, something that could inspire me to try to come up with different experiments that I could try to
Right.
validate these sensations that people are having. And there was nothing out there. So to my surprise, I realized, am I the first to actually try to validate touch?
Right.
And people, that have been in the field before me said, yeah, Ross, no one's ever tried to do it. Lloyd
Mhm.
Auerbach, who we feature in the documentary,
I
he's
love
like,
Lloyd.
yeah,
Love
No,
Lloyd.
he's amazing. And he said, we have never had this data before.
Yeah.
So it was an amazing experience and a challenging one too, because that is the
Sure.
biggest thing is when you ask somebody, how would you prove touch?
Yeah. Now,
And that's,
don't you think, all right, when we go into an investigation, you know, we rely everything on our senses, first of all,
right.
right? So we rely on how we're feeling about anything. If we walk in, if our stomach, our intuition, our, everything, at least I do anyway. Don't you feel that this makes people very vulnerable? Like they feel
Well,
vulnerable,
definitely.
automatically putting them
Definitely.
into that situation. Do you think that this
But
kind
I
of
think that also opens a whole nother door too. Because
Mhm.
if you think about it, if ghosts were touching people and we're always going in clothed, maybe there's probably a lot more chances that they have been touching us and we haven't been feeling it.
True.
So now we're just opening that door as well. And
Mhm.
then, you have to understand that skin is one of the largest sensing organs in our body.
Right.
So I really feel that, by using the physical body to help determine, what's happening in the environment really helps us as well. Because it does. It opens a lot more doors. But I really feel that there is something to this. And if we can collect more data to validate these experiences, it's going to just be mind blowing, you know?
So, and you've been doing it 7 years.
7 years.
Now, have
Yeah.
you gotten backlash from people? Obviously, I
The
mean,
only backlash that people have ever, the only negative reviews we've ever gotten are just people judging the subject matter,
okay,
not actually seeing the material. They
okay,
see, oh, Parasense, the naked experiments. Oh, that's got to be crap. Negative review,
right, right.
So you get people like that that'll give it a negative review without even knowing the content of the research.
Now,
Because like you said, they just think it's naked and afraid,
right,
just people running around doing naked ghost hunting, which they did try to do back when, Naked and Afraid came out and was becoming really popular.
right.
But this is a totally different concept.
Okay, so let's say I sign up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it just me by myself in a room and people are watching and you guys, and it's on video? Like, is it kind of set up like how in the movie Entity where they, had her in this recreated house? Not that you're
Yes,
recreating a house, but you know what I'm saying? Like how the scientists
exactly.
were like all watching and they were
Right.
watching her, just do like, or do you have one person? Is there two people? Do you do more?
It depends on I've done a few experiments where I've used two subjects in the
Hi,
room.
bestie. Sorry.
But most of the time, it is the individual. The subject is by themselves in a room. In fact, if you watch the documentary, we even prove that we are, well away from the subject so that they actually are not being contaminated by us being too close by. Because I feel you'll get better results if you can be further away from the subject as possible.
Okay.
So, when you got, 200 feet of cable, we try to take advantage of that.
Okay. So I'm in there by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm ghost hunting.
You're just actually most of the time to have a more controlled experiment. You'll be sitting in a chair. Most of the time, we'll encourage you to coax whatever's there to interact with you, and however you choose to do that. So there's that, and then of course all the equipment that's running in the room. We have different
Okay.
experiments that we do.
So basically I'm just talking out loud and I'm trying to get, now do you find that you do get more physical touch with a naked subject?
Well, again, this is all new data. We've
Right.
never had this data before.
Oh, true.
So,
Well, I
so
mean,
it's
like, I
one.
guess you could go back though and see like previous, like how many times somebody's getting. Well, I guess it wasn't that much of you guys are doing controlled environment. You guys are really setting it up to control the environment, or at least try as best
Right,
you can.
right.
You know what I mean, to control the environment. And um, it's interesting because I don't get touched that often. I hear more. As a matter of fact, I don't know of any time unless I myself don't realize what's going on. You know what I mean? Like I
Exactly.
might be saying,
Exactly.
"Oh, it's my jacket or my shirt," and brushing it
Right.
off. Um, but I was at the Shanley last weekend, and it felt like a cat was like kneading on the bottom of the like on my bed. like going like this, and it felt like, now that's the first time I ever felt anything like that, to
Mm-hmm.
my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I didn't have socks on my feet, I'd probably be really freaked out.
It's one of those things that, granted, we're just now scratching the surface in this research, but just what we've uncovered in the short period of time has been groundbreaking. A lot of people, a lot of the big names in the field have said this is amazing research.
Right. Now, do people, now what I have to give you, can, like, how do you then use what you've researched with me? Let's say, you've recorded everything, you've got all your audio, video, this and that. And now I would say, okay, Ross, you can use my video. So
Mm-hmm.
people are going to obviously see me, right? Or is that something that you keep confidential? Like, is that, or
Well,
to the
no,
person?
they'll see basically what you see on Naked and Afraid. We do blur the naughty bits for, modesty reasons.
Wow, darn it.
I know.
No.
And it's surprising too, because in my early research, when I started investigating, especially that brothel that I had talked about, I had a gentleman laying naked on one of the beds because they still had the old brothel beds there.
Oh, cool.
And so I had a gentleman spending the night there laying on the bed, and sure enough, in the middle of the night, he woke up to something fondling him. And we have it on video. There is definitely some movement going on down there.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's just like,
It
okay.
sucks that you can't show that as
Exactly. It's like, well, how do we advance this to, or get this, because it is important data. All right.
right.
When you
Sure.
have the physical movement and the witness saying, yeah, I woke up to somebody touching me down there, and sure enough, you can see that there's some movement going on down there.
Now, do you think that this might welcome more succubus, incubus type things?
Well, I think definitely people are going to have their own belief system and apply it to the research. That, you can't avoid that. But for me, I really try to avoid any type of labeling,
Hmm.
because if you're trying to have more of a scientific approach, you can't be biased in your approach. So
Right.
you can't be led by religion or even your own personal beliefs.
Hmm.
You have to go by the data. And
Hmm.
what does the data tell you? You have to start there before you can, say exactly what it is. Because even with what we've collected so far, I still can't tell you, yes, it's ghosts,
Right.
because we're still far behind in the data that we need to validate, life after death.
Right.
So we
Yeah.
definitely want to approach this in the correct manner and apply the right steps in trying to get the audience to understand what it is we're doing and what
Right.
it is we're collecting. And that is the biggest challenge out there too, because yeah, we're doing something different, but also when you're applying science, most people are bored by science. They're afraid of the ones and zeros.
Right.
And so that's another challenge that we have, is how do you make this research entertaining enough to let people know that what you're witnessing is incredible.
Right.
The data that you are seeing is incredible.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest challenges that we
Well,
have
even
as
now, though,
well.
everybody's so sensitive about everything anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So even the content, even though what you're doing is research and scientific, and you're trying to do the best you can and be mature, because let's face
Right.
it, I mean, people see naked and ghost hunting, automatically it's taboo, and it's, oh my gosh,
Right.
and I actually, like, I was very interested, when I read your bio and everything. I was like, wow, I'm going to see what this is about. I mean,
Hmm.
honestly, I had somebody contact me. I'll say, long story short, basically what they were doing was wanted to come on my show because it was an agent. They had people that would take, for lack of a better description, incubus and succubus stories and reenact them.
Hmm.
So they were basically making porn movies, reenacting these horrific things that people were going through,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, and because anybody I know that's ever had that done did not like it. You know what I mean? Like, they were freaked out by it. But it was all money, like you had to pay them to take your story, you had to pay to see the story, you had to pay, like, it was just crazy. And I said, I am not having you on my show for that.
No, in fact, I get another example of that. We were actually working with networks were interested in the research, and at the time when we had signed a contract with a production company, they wanted to call it sexual hauntings, and they really wanted to pursue cases where people were being sexually attacked by ghosts. And I was just like, well, hold on a second. For us to do that type of research, you're already dealing with a client that's going through a traumatic experience. And you also have to understand that I need that person to be the subject, because obviously they're the target.
Right.
And if I want to be able to see what they're claiming is happening to them, I need to film that.
Right.
All right. So now you're putting somebody who, again, is going through the tragic experience, the traumatic experience, and now they have to be willing to be naked in front of a bunch of people, documenting this experience.
Right.
I was just like, I'm not willing to go to that level.
Right.
I understand there are people out there who claim to have these experiences, but I'm not going to use that to, boast my, my research and say, hey, thank you for,
That's
exactly, exploit
really.
it. And so that was a big challenge for me. And that's one of the reasons why I ducked out of, trying to work with the production companies and the networks, is because they wanted to take it to a level I was not comfortable with.
Well, I commend you for that, because most people wouldn't care.
Oh,
and would
that's very true.
Yeah. Well,
that's a whole nother show we can talk about.
That's so true. So the locations, are they private homes? Do you do historical buildings? So like,
well, in the documentary, we do go back to Kook's Tavern, which is in Northport, Washington, and that's where the first case that I started to investigate, the brothel. So we do go back there, because the Parasense and Naked Experiments that is out now, that's basically considered our origin story. Now we've started filming the next one, and so now we can go into more details of the science and the experiments that we're trying to put out there. But a lot of the places that we have been focusing on have been more public places. So you have Kook's Tavern, you have also Brushy Mountain Prison, which is also featured in that.
I've heard of the Brushy Mountain for sure.
Oh, it's a great place.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
So, did people reach out to you and say, hey, or are they already investigators that and have worked with, and you're like, hey, come help me out with my research?
Are we talking about the locations or just the individuals involved?
In general, yeah, individuals involved and everything.
Well, most of it has been, all who you know. I think that's all how we all start out.
Right.
Is, connecting with the people that we've worked with, and making sure that you find the right location. So it's a lot of research as well, just to make sure you pick the right spot. So luckily for me, I do travel all over the world. And so I've had some opportunities to investigate a lot of places in every state. So there was a little bit of my own personal experiences that I could apply to some of these places that I wanted to go to and continue to research. The subjects, however, was mostly, it started out with a lot of the guys that I knew that were willing to, be a subject and get naked. It was a little more challenging to get women, which I can understand to be a little more intimidating for a woman to get naked in front of a few guys. For this, but I was lucky enough to find a few that were willing once they understood that we were serious about the research.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about. It's not a perverted thing; it's a research thing. It's like,
exactly, and that's some of the obstacles that we are still trying to overcome. Because, like I said, once people read the title, the Naked Experiments, it's just like, oh, this is just going to be something perverted. And it's not that at all. Once you watch it, you'll understand. In fact, we even got a negative review because somebody claimed, "Oh, I didn't get to see naked people." They're naked. They're just blurred because, we're just trying to
Yeah,
be
it's not
modest
about
about
the
our approach.
nakedness. I mean, it is because that's what you're using as far as your research is going, but that's not what you're not trying to, show everybody's naked bodies.
Exactly.
That's not what it
Exactly.
is.
The
Um so what would you say would be the place that you have the most data collected with this research?
Well, definitely Brushy Mountain Prison. It was an amazing experience. It basically ended up being the climax into the ending of the documentary. Um, there, we were able to determine the patterns that we experienced when people were attacked. Because even working, and this is a great example, working with Lloyd Auerbach, I've had the opportunity to work with him for years. And when I brought him into this project, we of course interviewed him, being that he's a parapsychologist. I wanted to get some more information as, what do they determine when people have these physical encounters? And, he brings up the fact that a lot of people in this field believe that we, in most cases, project the phenomena on ourselves.
Right. And they
Even
thought that about the entity case.
exactly, that she was projecting it on herself. And so I thought, okay, that if that's the case, then our research is only validating what they believe,
Right.
right? And so in the situation where we captured the patterns, like I said, we're the first to track the phenomena. In the motion sensors that we used, the 2 times people were scratched. And we have to, and I'm telling you, we look over the physical body of the subject to make sure that there's no physical marks on them, just to validate that there wasn't anything before we started. And then we also check them right after the experiment. We also ask them the standard questions. Do you feel any pain, burning, scratching, anything like that? And so there is this protocol that we have to follow for each subject. And both of the times when we did these experiments, these scratches just appeared during the experiment. And to help validate those experiences, the data showed, and remember, we're doing a 360 around the subject.
Right.
Something came out of nowhere, basically hit the subject, and then took off. Okay. Both times.
Now, how are you seeing it on a infrared
It's
camera?
basically what we're seeing is the data, the numbers.
Oh,
So
okay.
we can see something is triggering the motion detector to
Right.
show that something approached them and then left. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So, and we have that all in the documentary so people can see the data is being collected and it shows that. So if the case was that we basically project this on ourselves, you would think that the energy would come from us and then come back to do the attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would make sense if we are projecting the phenomena on ourselves.
Right.
But now we have new data that shows that something came out of nowhere, hit them, and then returned.
Right.
So that right there proves that there is some external phenomena that is happening to us.
Right. It's not just coming from
It's
our
not
mind.
coming from the individual or the subject. It's
Yeah.
coming from outside.
Did they ever validate? I can't remember her name. The entity case. I want to say Barbara Hershey because she was the actress, but
No.
yeah.
It was Claire.
I know she has passed away, but I mean,
Yeah.
The poor thing. I mean, she went through so
Carla. It was Carla.
Carla, yeah.
Yeah, Carla.
I mean, she moved from state to state. She,
Yeah.
wound up in Texas, but um, did
It's
anybody
did anybody validate her?
acknowledge that this was not her?
The thing is, from what I understand and talking to a lot of people that were involved in that case, as soon as she moved away, a lot of people were just thinking she was crazy. Yes, there was some amazing experiences when it comes to documenting what was happening around her. I know the
Hmm.
most famous photos are the light arches that were happening in the
Right.
room. Um,
And then other
but
people saw stuff. Didn't her boyfriend and her kids see
mhm.
stuff happen, but they still thought that was her?
Yeah, they still believe that she was psychically attacking herself
Mm.
and individuals. You get
Wow.
into possible poltergeist phenomena.
Right.
So it's interesting case. It really is. And I think right now, if what we have today, if we were to take that back in time to when she was experiencing that, I'd love to see the data we would have collected.
Yeah. So do the people that are doing, so would I say yes, you have permission to use, I'd have to sign consent, and then you
Exactly.
take, right, so then you take our, and how long does this go on for? 4 hours, 5 hours, or is it
The
like a weekend?
experiments.
Yeah, is it a weekend? Is it a month?
Well,
Is it
usually we'll set out for filming for 3 to 4 days at certain locations wherever we feel that the best location that we have access to. So it's one of those things that it takes a lot of research. And as we know in the paranormal field, it's all about being at the right place at the right time. So you
absolutely
have to apply that as well.
right? So that's what I was gonna say. So you approach a location and say,
Hmm.
"This is what we want to do here." I'm assuming you need to get consent to do what you're doing.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Um, was anybody like through the door in your face, or are most locations open
There
to?
was, being that this was a totally new concept, there were a few times where a few locations kind of slammed the door in my face because, when I told them they're going to be naked, they were just like, no, we're not going to have any of that. And so again,
They automatically say
judging the material before they even seen it.
no. Hmm.
So I had that a few times. But most places, when I, show them examples of some of the experiments that we've done in the past, and now, I can, show them the documentary. A lot of people are really excited to have us come out and continue the research.
Interesting. And now these are places though that have a lot of claims of physical touch you go to.
Exactly.
Interesting. Would you ever do this research in a private home case?
I would. But again, we're also in that situation where obviously I feel that the people living on that property are probably the target.
Right.
So in that situation where you feel that somebody is a target, then they are hopefully willing to be the subject as well.
Right.
Because, if you're going to be making these claims that something's touching you in various different ways, we want to try and document those sensations.
Right. And it's not for your personal gain. This is for to help the client and also for research,
Yeah, to have
and
we need a better understanding of what is actually going on out there.
right. And so your documentary, tell us a little bit about all that. And I mean, you can talk about it, right?
Oh
Openly.
yeah,
Because
definitely.
people come
It's
off
out
of
there.
it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it's Parasense and Naked Experiments just came out in November. We've won a couple awards. We're up for our third award right now for best documentary out there. Um, like I said, we're the first to try and document touch. And I've teamed up with Chad Goodwin, who actually is a documented scientist. You can look him up. He's real. He's not just an actor playing one on TV. And we are just going around trying to validate these encounters by producing different experiments. And we just collect the data, we put it out there for folks. We want to be as transparent as possible. In fact, our goal is to
Well,
get,
everybody's naked. I don't know how more transparent you can get.
well, we actually, a
I'm
lot
kidding.
of these television shows that you see on TV use the magic of editing to tell their story and, hype up the drama. We don't do that. Everything that you've experienced in our documentary is all what really happened. But the experiments do get cut down to just show the highlights of the experiments. And I really want to get the complete experiment out there so people can see the experiment from the beginning to the end. Of course,
Right.
in some cases, it's like, paint drying.
Right.
But we want to show the audience that this is legit. People did sit there for the full, 15, 20 minutes of the experiment. And you can see what happened from the beginning to the end. In fact, at the very end of the credits, if you stay till after the credits, we actually show Nick's experiment, his first experiment at Brushy Mountain Prison. So you get to see it from the very beginning till the end.
Right.
That's how transparent we want to be.
Yeah, no,
It
that's
is.
important. That's
Yeah.
important. It could be, and I noticed this too. You got all these people on YouTube, that, are faking stuff,
Yes.
right? And they have hundreds and thousands of views, and everybody's whatever, And I remember I did an experiment my own, where I went live on YouTube an entire investigation, the entire time, 5.5 hours I was live on YouTube. And I had, throughout the course, it's not nearly any, but it was like 15 people throughout the course of the 5 hours because
it's boring.
We're sitting in the dark.
Exactly.
Well,
and people don't understand that when it comes to a lot of these YouTube shows, they make money. They make money by how many subscribers they have and how many people watch this video.
Right.
So that's why they fake a lot of this stuff, so they can draw in more people to pay attention to them, because more people watching them, more money they make.
Right.
And so that's the unfortunate part, because a lot of people get this false reality of what ghost hunting's really like.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think now, okay, let's say, because I'm not shy, right? I'm not shy, especially if it's something with research, right? So would you then take me and say, oh, we're going here this weekend, we're going to try it here, or we're going here this weekend, we're going to try it here? Or do you kind of try to would use me in just one certain location whenever you're going there?
I think, and again, keeping an open mind, there are some certain individuals that may draw in more physical contact, especially those who could be psychic or, sensitive. I think I do keep an open mind to those individuals that may have more encounters than the average individual. So if I find that you are a subject that, when you say, oh, I feel something's touching me, and the data shows that there's something happening around you on multiple times, you would become a very valuable subject for us.
Right.
Because now one of the biggest problems that we have in the paranormal field is there's not enough data points to validate one encounter. Most people just go in there with an EMF detector. Ooh, it went off. It was paranormal. That doesn't prove paranormal activity.
Right.
You have to have multiple data points to validate at least one encounter.
Right.
And if we can have a subject sit in a chair and say, I feel something's touching me right now, and the data's going off showing that there's something happening around you, and if there's something else that we can validate, maybe an EVP happened at the exact same time, those are 3 points of data that become very valuable in this field. So in that situation, yes, I would use a subject multiple times if we were able to collect that kind of data, because that's important data. Another thing is, we do not tell you where you're going and what you'll be doing. You will not know until you actually sit down for the experiment what we're going to be doing. Because I don't want people to be front loaded, right? When it comes to information, especially if you are psychic or sensitive. I want to be able to validate your encounter, your experiences.
And a true psychic or a medium or anything like that won't want to know.
Exactly.
They won't want to know.
So, I'll do everything I can to make the experience more credible. And the less you know, the more credible it becomes when you are actually having the encounter and we can validate that information.
Interesting. This is really interesting. Get Haunted. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're awesome group of people. But a couple weeks ago they were at the Hoover House in Pennsylvania, Waynesboro, and they did a investigation, and it was called Making Sense of Your Senses, and it was no equipment. It was just using now naturally they were not naked, right?
Right.
But they went into this investigation just using their senses, you know, minus their skin because they were dressed. I mean, obviously, you have your
You can
arms,
still feel things. Yeah, definitely.
but what it I love this because I'm not a big equipment person, right? I use my recorder, but I tend to just rely on myself really, which that's really not getting much data. So the people that
Right.
are skeptics don't like that, and the people that are paranormal investigators don't like that because, but I'm like, hey, listen, I feel something exists. I feel like I've heard them. I'm clairaudient. Not all the time, but I can definitely, and that's been caught on my recorder. But I don't think I'm not shy, so I'm not quite sure. I mean, Jossie, she's one of my peaches. She said she likes the idea, but the thought of being naked in front of so many people is definitely the challenge. And
It
and
is.
it is a challenge.
And I understand it takes a unique individual that would want to be a subject. And so I totally respect that. And we would, and everybody that's, willing to be a subject is, it's under their own free will. We do
Right,
not make people do this, you
right,
know? So yeah, no, but to get to your point, a lot of times most people that have experiences weren't ghost hunting. They're not ghost hunters. They were
right,
just at home doing their thing and something happened. They were at the right place at the right time and something happened and they can't explain. So we don't always have the opportunity to have the equipment there to validate these encounters or try to record these encounters. So, going into an environment and relying on your senses is great. But like I said in the very beginning of this, it just becomes your story, your
right,
experience. And
yeah,
now you're in a situation where you have to convince people that, yes, that happened to you.
right, right, right,
And we just have to take your word for it.
right.
So if we could add more to that, is what we're trying to do with Parasense, we can prove that when somebody says, I've been touched by a ghost, here's the data.
Right.
Here's the proof that something came up to you and did something and then left.
Absolutely. And then I think it's awesome that you're doing that. I mean, I would love to see that. I'm gonna watch the documentary. I want to see it because I didn't want to come in. I don't come into my interviews um knowing much because I want to be a part of my audience and I want to
Mm-hmm.
ask the questions that I think,
Sure.
my audience would want to know. So now I'm definitely I do definitely want to watch the documentary because it sounds interesting. I mean, I definitely probably would have been like, what? If you were referred to me. So I know after going through what I went through with those last people, and them saying, oh, we do this, and then seeing, the naked and the power senses, I'd be like, oh, come on. But I probably would be guilty of that. But I'm
I
glad
understand.
that I kept an open mind with it. And I'm glad that I, you know, having you on so that you can explain to people and tell people, so hopefully more people go watch the documentary and see what you guys are doing for the research of our field. And you're right, I don't know of anybody else that tries to document touch.
Right.
Talik asks, how do you document the pulling of hair, whether it's long or short hair?
Well, in that situation, again, the 360 system is important, so we can see what's happening around the subject. Video is also going to be very important, so hopefully you can see what's happening to the hair at the time. So 360 research is very important, and there's not a lot of people doing that. We're not even doing a lot of 360 video. That's one thing that's really frustrating. The technology is there. The technology is affordable now, but not people are filming in 360 because it's always, ooh, did you see that? No, the camera wasn't facing that way.
Right.
Well, why should you be in that situation anymore? You have access to 360 video now. We should be able to see what's happening around the investigator in a full 360.
That's interesting.
So I feel that the technology is there. It's more affordable for people. We have access to it. We're just not utilizing it because the biggest problem, and I know we talked about this before the show, is most people are getting their education from very badly produced shows and
Yes.
horrible people representing us in this field.
I
And
agree.
so it becomes a situation where it's monkey see, monkey do. People are getting their education and following these individuals that claim to be experts in the field. And it leads us nowhere.
Right.
If you really think about it, the paranormal shows have been on now for going almost 20 years now. Okay. I've been doing this before the paranormal shows were out there.
Right.
And what have we really accomplished in those 20 years?
Right.
We really haven't gotten anywhere.
Right.
It's the same thing over and over again.
Right.
Different cast, same locations. They all go to the same locations. And the technology hasn't gotten anywhere either. A lot of the things that most ghost hunters are dependent on, especially for the television shows, are suggestive devices.
Right.
Devices that give us that instant gratification. Ghost hunting today, from a lot of people, has become very lazy ghost hunting. They're dependent on their apps on their phones that are going to give them that instant gratification, ghost boxes and other devices that give you the bells and whistles during an investigation. They don't want to go back and watch 6 hours of video or listen to 6 hours of audio.
Can I tell you, we did an investigation January 21st. I just finished my audio today.
Awesome.
Today.
And it's a lot of work. It really
is a lot of work.
It's a lot of tedious work, and people don't want to do that nowadays.
That's so true. And you know, and it's hard, especially when you are going over your stuff and you know you're trying to validate the stuff that you're getting, and not everybody is doing the same thing that you even go with. You know what I mean? So, you know, how many?
And one thing I do want to point out too is we're talking about going back and looking over the data. Chad, you know, the scientist, he's got to go through millions and millions of data points to, you know, try and track down some of the phenomena that we captured. You know, and that's a lot of work because when he's collecting the data, and that's one of the things that we've also learned through the documentary, doing this documentary and developing our own equipment, is the equipment that most ghost hunters are dependent on is one, not sensitive enough and not quick enough to collect a lot of the data that we need to validate this stuff.
Oh no, I get people ask all the time, "Aren't you scared?" I'm like, before I know what's going on, it's over with. It is quick. It's very fast. Things happen so fast.
And the devices that most ghost hunters are dependent on don't collect it that quick enough.
Right. So the 360 thing, camera, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I was talking about 360 cameras, but we also, our data collector runs on a 360.
Oh, okay. So, thank you. So that's what in my head. I'm thinking there's like a camera, and you're seeing everything 360 is how I'm like when you're saying 360.
When we do record our subjects or experiments, we do have cameras at all angles, top as well. So we do, yes, collect 360 when we're doing the subjects and experiments. Yes.
How long has been your longest experiment?
Most experiments will last probably up to about 20 to 25 minutes. Now, if there's a lot of activity going on, they're having a lot of experiences, we want to, of course, run the experiment as long as possible. But you also have to consider, you know, for health reasons, they're naked. Sometimes the environment can be cold. So, you know, we have to look out for their safety as well. For the environment, not just the paranormal activity that could happen, but the environment itself, how the environment can affect them and fatigue and all that. So we have to put that in consideration. So most experiments will last, I think the most is about 25 minutes.
So do you have to have any requirements for your subjects, like health wise and things of that nature? Do they get screened for certain things?
I would say right now, no. I'm willing to test about anything. I'm not, particular. They don't have to be beautiful people. They don't have to be a certain weight. I would put anybody out there that's willing to make themselves available,
Mm-hmm.
because again, we don't know what the spirit is willing to touch.
Right.
So, and that's the whole reason why the nudity, people said, well, why can't they just do it in their underwear? Well, yeah, that's fine too. But if a ghost is going to say, I want to touch, I hate to say it,
You can say it.
the breast, why do we want to limit ourselves in that situation?
True.
I hate to say it, but if there's
No, but you're
perverted people out there, there's perverted ghosts out there as well.
There is. And like I said, that movie, that was one of the coolest scenes when it was touching her boob.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't
and
believe.
that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, I couldn't
the
believe
physical imprints.
Yeah, how long ago that movie was made and how well that was done.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Honestly, I mean, like you could see like the imprints on her boobs, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't imagine. I just can't imagine, going through something like that, like what she went through. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
But 25 minutes. But are you at the location for a couple of hours, or is it just?
Well, the whole team's there as we're doing setup, tear downs, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Depending on the location, like the prison, we had access to multiple locations where people had been physically touched. So it's a lot of setup and tear down, moving to different locations, producing multiple different experiments.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, cause so when we go somewhere, we're investigating, we're there overnight, 2 days, 5 hours. You put a subject in there. You say 25 minutes. Now, do they take a break and then they go back in? Like, there's something.
There have been times where they'll do multiple different experiments. Like I said, I've got well over 100 experiments that I came up with that have not been, published yet.
Oh, cool.
One of my favorites that I've used, and we do briefly talk about it in the first documentary, is the puppet. And in that experiment, I take elastic string and I attach it to various sensitive parts of the body. And that could be, the wrists, the nipples, the back of the neck. And then I take the other part of the string and I stretch it out to various different parts of the room. So the concept of this experiment is you're extending your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now you have this elastic string attached to your wrist and it's stretched out to, the opposite side of the room. And you're sitting there perfectly still. And I was in hopes when I developed this experiment that if anything should pass around them or move by them, maybe they might feel a tug or maybe they'll feel a vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And to my surprise, that's exactly what they felt.
Oh, wow.
That there was some sort of sensation that people were feeling when something went by the string. Like a vibration was happening or even tugging, people had reported.
Devil's advocate, could a bug?
Sure.
But you would see that.
You would see that on video because, again, everything is being documented thermally and also on the video as well. And, of course, now our whole concept with the show is we will introduce a new experiment. And then in the next one, we're going to advance that experiment. So now with Chad, he's going to now take that. Now the puppet is one of ours that we're working on. And now how can we validate that tension in the string? That is his challenge as a scientist, is now we have people feeling the tension changing in the string. How do we prove that? Mm-hmm. And so that's how we're trying to advance this and make it entertaining, because as the audience, you get to see the science grow and change as we advance these different experiments that I come up with. Mm-hmm. And so now with his next challenge as a scientist, he's now working on ways to measure that tension in the string so we can actually see how much was going on, how much it vibrated, or how much, it actually moved. So
That's
to
awesome.
again now give us another data point when people say, I feel something tugging on the string on my wrist. Well, here's some data now to validate that.
That's awesome. Now,
Yeah.
have you guys ever been the subjects yourselves?
Chad has. He actually, you get to see it in the documentary how he gets to that level, being a scientist, and that was one of the things that was amazing for me. Is he says, if I'm trying to validate these experiences, I need to feel what these
What they
people are
feel,
claiming.
right?
Exactly. So as a scientist, he made himself available as a subject. I have done it a couple times myself. Nothing that's been on video for the documentary, but yeah, I really do feel that sometimes, it's great to be the subject itself, just to know what everybody else is going through or what they're experiencing.
Yeah. And then,
Because I've had situations where I've been on investigations and I felt the tapping on my shoulder
mhm.
or the tugging on my jacket or shirt. And most cases, I just kind of, I always have to second guess myself.
Yeah, I do
Was
too.
it just my jacket? Was it, something else that could be explained, and not just say, oh, it was paranormal? I
Right,
want us to get to the point where we can say, yes, that was paranormal.
right. But don't you think it would have to be in the same type of a situation?
Yes, but if we can collect the data to validate that people are having these experiences, now when people say,
I
oh,
felt
I've
something.
felt something like that, now we don't always have to second guess ourselves.
Mm, I like it.
Mhm.
I like what you guys are doing. It's really awesome. Now,
Thank you.
who can you say who's all involved? I know you had mentioned Chad, but it sounds like you have like more of a team. You have what camera people? Do you have,
We
you
have
know,
a team that we use right now. Billy Lewis helped us. Direct the first one, so that's out there, and he's got a few documentaries that he's done. So you can definitely look him up. Like I said, Lloyd Auerbach. We've
I
done
love
some work
Lloyd.
with him. So we're trying to bring him on a little bit more to help validate the research, because that was important to me. It's just like I wanted somebody who has been in this field a lot longer than me, who's got a name for himself, and see us do the research.
Right,
So he can even say, this is not the magic of editing.
right,
These are not a bunch of actors trying, to get a jump scare out of you guys. This
right.
is the real deal. And so we took him on a few investigations so he could actually see how we proceed with the investigation. We introduced him to the Spectre system so he could see it and how it works. We also, Chad spent lots of hours on the phone with Dr. Barry Taff, and getting some information and trying to help us advance the research. So we really did work on trying to build a team to help bring credibility to what we're doing.
That's awesome. For anybody watching, can you tell them if they're just the name of your documentary, where people can find it to watch it if they're interested?
Oh
Um,
yeah. So Parasense, the Naked Experiments, it is on all the pretty much on streaming outlets, Amazon, Apple TV, YouTube. So it's pretty easy to find. And it's also on DVD. You can buy it through Amazon and Walmart, Target, that type of stuff. So
and
yeah,
there's two,
it's out
right?
there.
You said there's two.
There's one right now. The origin story is out, so we do have that one out. We are filming the second one right now. We just finished filming the first segment, so we're getting out. We're waiting to get out there for the second segment. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
I mean, I can't wait to watch it, and I'm going to report back to you my thoughts. And
I would love to hear your thoughts.
yeah,
That's feedback is so important for us. I
absolutely.
like I said, the one negative review we got was because they didn't get to see naked people.
Oh wow.
you know,
Now, do you guys do your editing?
we do.
Okay.
We would like to try and get us a little more advanced right now. But you got to understand, this is based solely off the research. We did not go out there to film a documentary. What actually happened is, yes, I was brought into this field to try and prove touch, and I was just filming the experiments.
Hmm.
But I realized, as a paranormal researcher, you have to publish your findings.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, is a lot of people are too afraid to publish their findings because they're so afraid somebody's going to steal it. It's going to happen. People are going to
Yeah.
steal your ideas because there's assholes out there. I'm sorry.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
And I was afraid of that in the beginning too. But if I don't publish my research, it dies with me.
Right. Yeah. Then where's it going? Right.
Yeah. And so it's important information. And if we're trying to really, if you are really claiming that you're a paranormal investigator and not trying to do this just to get on TV, then you should be publishing your research.
Right.
It needs to get out there. We need to have that data. And the biggest problem right now is there's so many people out there making up this crap. As we talked about, you know, with a lot of these YouTube shows, they're making up this stuff. And if we're just going to be facing a bunch of fake stories and encounters, that just takes us down so many dead end roads.
Mm-hmm. It really does.
Yeah, we as researchers, we need the true raw data to help us have a better understanding of what is physically happening in our environment.
Right. Exactly. I'm so happy you say that, because that was a fight for me a couple months ago. And, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, would say, that kept telling me, you know, you got to let it go. You got to do this. And I say, you don't understand how detrimental that is.
It is. It really is.
What we're trying to do, you know, and it's so disheartening that more people aren't fighting for that, you know, to make sure. I mean, because it's all about this.
Well,
It's
yeah, it's about egos. It's, you know, it's right now, the situation is there's a lot of money going into paranormal research for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
For entertainment reasons.
Exactly.
That's exactly why millions of dollars are going into paranormal research, because they want to entertain you with their findings. And it's not real findings.
Right.
It's not real data. And if we truly believe that there is spirit out there, that there is some form of afterlife, we need the data. The data is so freaking important. Because right now, if we strip everything down to its bare bones, we really don't have a lot of information of what's truly happening out there. We don't. All of this is based off of theories, ideas, and people's own belief system.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. You know, and I for sure appreciate you, you know, doing this scientifically, approaching it, and, you know, trying to collect as much data as you can. I'm definitely going to watch the documentaries, and I'm probably definitely going to want to have you on again afterwards.
Oh, you bet.
So that we can talk about it again, because
and we're just talking about Parasense. We didn't get to talk about a lot of the shows. Come on.
I know. There's like so much. I mean,
there really is. You know, I used to do a show back in the day called the Angry Ghost Hunter Show, and it was just based off my rants of the problems that we have in the paranormal field.
Yeah.
And I developed the show because I really wanted to be able to talk about these problems, because I know we're all facing them. Anybody in the paranormal field is facing them, and like, well, how can we fix it? You know. All we're going to do is sit around and bitch about it. Well, then it really doesn't get us nowhere.
Right.
But if we can at least, if we at least want to talk about it, then we can talk about, okay, well, how do we get past this? How do we fix this problem?
I mean, unfortunately, you have to have people have to listen. You know what I mean? If they're the problem, they have to listen. You know, they have to be able to take constructive criticism, or any criticism. And a lot of times their egos are so big, they don't.
Right.
And they defensively take it, and then they lash back out, and, you know, it's really sad. You know, they talk, you know, people talk about working together and doing this and doing that, and, you know, they don't live up to what it is that they're doing. And it honestly is very frustrating for people as myself, and for you, I could say, because it sounds like, you know, we both have kind of like the same, you know, you're more scientific than I am for sure, but I want your research. You know what I mean? I want that research. I want that data, you know. I love it. There was a question here. Do you think we can manifest these encounters?
Definitely. I think there is still a lot more research that needs to be done with the human body and the human experience. There is still a lot of research that needs to be done when it comes to psychic phenomena. As we were talking about earlier with Parasense, working with Lloyd, where they believe that we were physically attacking ourselves when we have these encounters. But now, through the data that we've collected, we've proven that there's something coming from nowhere, attacking the individual and then leaving. As I said, if it was coming from ourselves, it would be leaving ourselves and then coming back for the
Have you
attack.
ever encountered that?
Something leaving
Coming
them
from
and
a
coming
person.
back?
Yeah, somebody that was manifesting. Have you encountered any?
Not yet. Not yet. We have not collected that data yet. And I'm not saying that that couldn't happen. I
Right.
do believe, there's a lot of stuff that the human mind is possible or capable of doing.
Yes.
And I don't think we have the research. We're still researching the physical body and the mind. So can we manifest this stuff? Yes. But then it's not even, is it psychic phenomena? There's psychological issues that we have to deal with as well.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why I believe it's so important that people, when they do investigations, that mostly everybody in the team should go in cold. They shouldn't know any prior information about the location.
Right.
Because that all that does is just helps them manifest their own encounters.
Sure. I'm always torn between that, to be honest with you. I honestly don't like to hear the ghosty claims or the other people's claims. Historical facts, yes, but I go back and forth with that. I mean, when I first started training, we weren't allowed to know anything. It was just the team lead, if you will. They knew everything, but the people doing the investigation did not, and I respect my friends who are psychic mediums that, don't want to know. I understand why they don't want to know. Because for them that would be validation if they could come, especially if they come up with something that maybe the location doesn't know or the historical doesn't know, but then they find out later on. I think that's amazing to see. So for me, I agree with that. But I so go back and forth with that, like wanting to know and not know what's better.
Me personally, if I have the opportunity, I don't like to know, because for me it helps build my confidence in trusting my feelings, that gut feeling, that fight or flight feeling. Because a lot of times when you have those feelings and you know too much information about the location, you start second guessing yourselves. Like, oh, is it just my imagination because I know too much information about this location? I know people have been physically attacked here, so is that triggering something within me?
Right.
So I think to help understand and trust your inner being, I think the less you know is better, because then you can react to those feelings naturally.
Right. I just want to give a shout out. This is a Jing. She's in Indonesia, and it's probably
Awesome.
about 2:00 in the morning there. And she is a trooper. I love you. Just want to give her a shout out because she watches faithfully, and
Awesome.
yeah. So you're being broadcasted in Indonesia right now. So
that's one of the things that I'm very grateful to have the opportunities to travel all over the world, because learning about different cultures and their religions and their beliefs when it comes to the paranormal is just fascinating.
do you find that one culture attracts more phenomena than other cultures?
That's a tough one, because you could go into a situation, like Asian cultures are very big believers in the paranormal, in spirit. They worship their ancestors, and still have shrines to their families,
Right.
to keep their family spirits happy. So you have a lot of that. So for them, spirit encounter is almost a daily basis, whether it is a physical phenomena or whether it's just their cultural belief. It could just be the wind shut the door, but for them it was spirit, it was a ghost, it was my ancestor
Right.
came in.
Sure.
So they don't need any reason for debunking.
Right.
because it's built within them. You know,
Right.
it's
They
part
just
of their
believe.
culture. Yeah,
Whether it is or isn't, they believe.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's funny too, because as I go into all these different, you know, places, like I went to Italy and had the opportunity to investigate the catacombs. And it was challenging to get them to let me do this because I told them I was a ghost hunter. And this is before the ghost hunting shows were out there. So it wasn't a big phenomenon as it is today. So there wasn't a lot of people, I'm sure, going around telling people, oh, I'm a ghost hunter,
Right.
you know, because most people would think you're crazy. But you go to a place like Italy and you tell them you want to ghost hunt, and they're like, yes, there's ghosts here, but we don't understand this concept of ghost hunting.
Right.
Yeah, they don't need any validation that there's ghosts there. They already believe and know that there are.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
what's the purpose of what you're trying to do? I don't get it. Was
Right.
that attitude that I had to deal with.
Mm.
But I was able to convince them to, hey, give me an opportunity to at least walk around in these crypts by myself and see if I can make some sort of encounter. And they
Yeah.
finally
In
let me do it.
May of next year, I'll be going to Pompeii.
Oh, it's amazing out there.
I'm excited
Amazing.
about that.
Temple of the Gods was amazing.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
excited. I'm excited
Mhm.
about that. That is one thing. You know, I also kind of I'm not Catholic, but I definitely am looking forward to the Vatican, the Rome, that whole area,
Mhm. Mhm.
because of it being so religious based. Because usually, you know, when it's like so hardcore, you know, that tends to bring out activity as well. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
In what I've seen and read and everything like that, you know. So I'm really excited about that. Pompeii for sure has
Oh
been
yeah.
on my bucket list for I can't even tell you how long.
If you get a chance, and I forget the name of the area, but go see the beautiful mummy.
Mm,
It's one of the crypts out there. You can look her up. But it's one of the mummies of a little girl that has been best preserved.
really?
And you actually can go check her out in one of the crypts. And the crypts are amazing down there. I mean, if seeing dead people doesn't, you know, freak you out, but you will
No, you know
see.
what freaks dead animals freak me out, not dead
Yeah.
people. I feel bad for dead animals. I see dead people, I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm kidding."
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't see.
no, it is amazing when you have the opportunity to check out some of those crypts, and definitely go see the beautiful mummy
Oh, I definitely
if you're
will.
going to be out there, because it's an amazing experience to see this little girl, and she just looks like she's sleeping in her coffin, you
Oh,
know, and I think she was embalmed in the 1800s, you know.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, Lauren is asking, I hope I said that right. What is the one place you both have investigated that had the most active?
Oh, that's another tough one. You know, I've had the opportunity to investigate some of the most amazing places all over the world. You know, the castles throughout Europe. I even got to go through the Amityville House. But even going through the Amityville House,
Oh
the
yeah, I wanted to
experiences.
ask you about that. Shit, I forgot
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
You know, nothing happened.
Yeah,
Um, but again, you know, with ghost hunting, it's all about being at the right place at the right time.
sure,
So even when you have these opportunities to investigate what some people claim to be the most haunted in the world, doesn't mean you're going to have an experience to validate that.
sure.
So for me, some of the most active places are places that I've had the opportunity to be in multiple times, like the Seattle Underground. I used to
Mhm.
be a tour guide for them. So I've been in the Seattle Underground multiple times.
Oh, that's
And so
awesome.
that gave me multiple opportunities to have experiences.
Right. Yeah,
So,
and I was gonna say, I think like the more you go somewhere, the more you know, for me, it's Gettysburg. I mean, everybody would say Gettysburg, right? But I
mhm,
go at least once a month.
yeah,
So those places I do have more experiences at, you know. So I always, when somebody asks me that, I go, okay, Gettysburg aside, because nobody could ever compete with Gettysburg. But
right.
Gettysburg aside, for me
Hmm.
personally, you know what I mean? Like take that aside, you know what I mean? For me, it'd be Hinsdale House.
Okay.
I had the most experiences there to date. It was pretty cool.
Right.
Um, but um, um, So, oh,
Are we getting lots of questions?
no, I'm looking. I get so upset like when I go past and I don't see. There was a question.
Well, I hope everybody's enjoying the show.
Yes, everybody is. I am getting
Awesome.
some cool messages and feedback and saying
Awesome.
that, they really are liking the show. I want people to check out. I'm going to go watch your documentary when we're done because I want to see this. I'm so interested in your research, and I'm like, now I wish I would have watched it before.
Well, all I ask is, please give it a fair chance, whether you're skeptic or not, and please review it. Leave a positive review if you can. The more reviews we get attached to the documentary, the more it gets out there for people to see it. It'll get tagged more with a lot of regular paranormal shows that people are looking for. They'll say, oh, this might be something you might be interested in, and the more positive reviews we get attached to that, the more it'll get people the opportunity to say, hey, maybe I will check that out.
Absolutely.
So we definitely would appreciate that.
I am definitely gonna, and I will share out the documentary,
Awesome.
on my pages and everything, so that people hopefully will watch this and see where you're coming from, and they're not just reading the title and automatically putting you into a category, where you don't want to be.
Exactly.
And so I'm hoping, that people will watch the show and want to see this because this is a whole nother avenue of research.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I don't get naked and afraid, but I get this.
And and that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to open people's minds that, unfortunately they judge us against, shows like Naked and Afraid, or, when they were trying to do naked ghost hunting back in the day. This is a totally different concept. It really is.
Wow. Ross, thank you so much for coming on and sharing that with us. I did want to really quick. I've had you for like an hour and 15 minutes already. I hate when I keep people longer than expected, only because
I'm fine. If you wanted to go for 3 hours, I could probably do it.
I did want to ask about the Amityville. I know you said nothing happened there. Most people, and I've heard the place is not active.
Yeah. There hasn't been any recent reports from anybody that's lived in the house. So it's an interesting story.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, yes, a tragic event did happen there. So that is true. It's I did have the opportunity to work with the Warrens back in the day. I was even on the lecture circuit with Lorraine before she passed.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a pleasure and an honor to have met them.
Right.
And I always, whether you are a fan of the Warrens or not, I have to give them a level of respect because they were doing this when ghost hunting was a joke.
Right.
They took more criticism than praises that we do today.
Right.
So for somebody to be a public figure in the paranormal field back in those days, they had to be a strong individual because they were being attacked far more than they were being praised for their research. So the Warrens, yes, their research is based off of their religious beliefs. And for me, I try to keep religion out of it.
Right.
I really do want to collect the data to validate these encounters. And as I've said earlier, you can't be biased in your research.
Right.
So for me, they're at a totally separate end of the spectrum when it comes to researching the paranormal.
Right. I agree with you. Also, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I had fun. I loved learning about this, and now I definitely am going to go watch the documentary for sure. Parasense, right?
Yep.
Please, guys, check it out. Be open-minded about it, and leave Ross a review. Share if you like it. I want to thank everybody for coming on, Ross, especially you. Thank you so much. I will have you on again for sure.
Anytime.
after the second, you're in the process of doing a second documentary, correct?
Yep.
So yeah, and I want to watch it, and then after your second one, I definitely want to have you on again, and definitely talk about everything. And maybe we can share some clips and all that stuff, and talk to people, try to help get the word out there a little bit about it.
Yeah,
You know,
and you can also go to the website too,
touch
touchedbyaghost.com.
videos. Yep,
And then
awesome.
hopefully maybe we can bring Chad on too and get
Oh
his
yeah, absolutely. Would love
viewpoint as
to,
well. Yeah.
for sure. Absolutely. Next show we could have a a trifecta of
You
of fun.
bet.
I thank you so much, dear. Thank you so much for coming on.
You be safe out there, okay?
You too, you too. And thank you everybody for joining us. See you guys on Wednesday. Good night, everyone.